Check. All right, I think we are live. So I'm going to just check on my phone.
All right.
And normally I just hang out and then chat. Check that the stream's good, share it, all that jazz. I'm going to check to see if I can hear it. That's okay. I'm going to check to see if okay, we can. Cool. And let me check Twitch. And I can send you links, Chris, if you wanted.
I would love that. I love extra links.
Cool. All right, texting Chris. Links. Here is Twitch.
Oh, it did it automatically. I already had you saved as my recommended stream.
Oh, nice. Oh, cool. So it is going nice.
Yeah, it's on my page too. It's like live on my page as well.
Hell yeah, I'm glad you got that figured out. All right, so we are going to keep hanging out for a few minutes before we jump into the stream proper. I'm just going to throw it in the LFOs. And occasionally we get people pop in. And cool. All right. Yeah. So I'm gonna find some music to put on background. We're very, very casual and loose here.
Yeah, it's like I probably had some like icebreaker questions for you, to be honest.
Yeah. Let me get something rolling, and then see what are we? No, what feeling? Be just kind of quiet in the background.
I'm so impressed that you have all this like set up too.
Thank you.
Like I know this is like your jam, but it's always cool. It's like something that like I feel like I'd have to do a lot of prep work to figure out.
It did take a while to get set up, but it's worth it. All right, all right, you should get some audio. Gonna be quiet.
I got some audio.
Cool. And I'm gonna check levels one more time.
Oh, you got that smooth jazz. This just in. You're sitting down with Mr. James and Mr. Chris. Hope everyone's having a good night out there. You know, on this lovely Thursday evening. We're in Boston. It decides to rain every single weekend for no reason during the summer.
Yeah. And be beautiful outside during the week.
Exactly. We're all in work. We stare at our windows wistfully. This is your first session of allwack ASMR. Welcome.
Are you finding another career option here?
Ideally. Oh.
That wasn't meant as a bit. It's just like
no. That was awesome. No. I don't think you have a single rotten bone in your entire body. I don't think it's humanly possible for you to have a rotten bone in your body. I really don't, man. I don't mean to get you up live on stream, but I mean seriously.
I take that as a compliment.
Yeah, man. Like there's few people that I could expect to meet more pure as you, you know, in the best way possible. It's awesome.
I appreciate that. Well, feel free to throw anything in chat if we're having any audio issues. Both Chris and I will be chatting throughout the stream together. But right now we're just gonna keep hanging out for a few minutes while people trickle in. And yeah, I can give a brief introduction for those who don't know. Well, Chris and I, we've known each other for a bit. We went to the same college. We've been through several aliases.
It's true. It's very true.
Both of us over the past couple of years. And we've learned a lot from each other, both on the DJing front and the music front. We've done both of those things together too, back-to-backs through COVID. We did a stream every month with like a different theme. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And then pretty soon after that, we wrote a track together, and in the scenes, we stayed in touch. Chris moved up here to Boston by chance after finishing college, so we were able to reconnect and still been good friends. And the story for this stream basically is Chris was working on a track and wanted some insight into some of the mixed down stuff last week, and we were talking, and he was like, you know what, I could certainly use some more input here. And I was like, you know what, it might be fun. Planning on doing a stream next week if we wanted to do this together and basically share my mixing process, because I don't think Chris hasn't really seen that. Maybe a little bit of it, the track we worked together.
It's true.
But I did some work on that offline, and it wasn't more of like a proper everything start to finish, because often when I work I mix as I go, and the track we worked on was already pretty much mixed. It was just kind of like going over the finishing touches. So today the plan is to take a look at this track, this collab he has been working on with Azon. Is that the right way to say it?
That's right. Azon. Shout out Sam. She is a former touring drummer, incredibly talented woman in the bass scene. Many notable DJ sets as well. Some that come to mind right away is Say My Name. She has been on many music festivals with me. We were one of the Fresh Ravers victors for the DJ competition that was held at the end of 2022, alongside Rare Hollow, Unspun, and Fungus, who I also just dropped a track with. My relationship with Sam has spanned many years. She's highly inspirational to me because she comes from a different place in the music world than I've been exposed to. She did a lot of marching band as well, and then went on to tour the United States as a drummer in a lot of ways, which I think is very interesting. This track as well, I want to say like it crosses over both of our styles in a way that I never would have expected. Like, I don't altogether like play music all the time that sounds like closies, but this is very close to that world. Wakan has a secondary label within its orbit that's spelled SS Quan. I don't know exactly how it's pronounced. I don't think I've ever heard it say out loud, but they have released down-tempo and melodic music from acts like Cannibalists and Superfuture and many others that you may have heard of. I do recommend checking out this sub-label, but this track was very much influenced by that style of music, with a darker twist. There's also a vocal in this track that Sam has recorded that is a short story related to the dark forest theory of the universe, which is a cosmic nihilism theme. I think cosmic nihilism is a very large thrust of what I like to express in my music, or at least be influenced by. So, she was willing to take on the darker edge, but then add melodic elements that I think fit very squarely in a melodic bass kind of landscape, especially for like left field bass music. Like, I'm not really talking as much about like future rhythm, or maybe like a chime tune comes to mind.
Sure.
It's lower energy than that, but it fills the speakers in a way that I think is very rich and warm, which is a style of mixing I would love to have more experience with. So that's something I'm also hoping that we'll explore today. Okay. It's part of like what I don't necessarily know how to do yet.
Sure.
This track is very unique in my discography for that reason, I would say.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds great. I gave you a brief introduction. Was there anything you wanted to add in terms of introducing yourself? I think we kind of hit up some of the stuff when you were talking about the whip, but anything else? I don't even know if I said. I think I've been referring to him as Chris. This is allwack. Yeah. Anything else you wanted to add about yourself?
Well, it's wiggity wiggity wiggity. No, but what I'd like to add is I'm sitting next to a fella that basically is one of the reasons why I do what I do today. We've known each other for more than a bit. We've known each other for, I guess, close to a decade at this point. Still got a few years to build out there, but I think one of the things I tried to tackle by going to music school recently, I did an academy within Conti, of Zebler and Conti experience, was to close the gap in between mixing, mastering, and the rest of my artistic relationship with music. So a lot of you, if you listen to my music right now, you'd probably see a lot of elements of like left field bass music and trap and dubstep. But within my sets, I do almost always have a song like this. I was put in this position to produce bass music that varied across the spectrum because of the needs of me as a DJ, actually. So as my DJing style has directly influenced my production style, and that's made this process of making music that feels right for the allwack project very long and drawn out, maybe more so than other producers for that reason. I've had to learn like skill sets across many different subgenres. So as we venture on today, I would love it if you all gave my music a listen on other platforms and then saw the project as like an amalgamation of all these things. I don't want to over explain every song. I just want to say that like I'm excited to learn new skills today. And that's been the through line of my entire artistic project. So my name's Chris. I perform under the alias allwack. Let's get started.
Heck yeah. And if you're listening along, feel free to throw any questions you may have in chat as well.
I will be monitoring the chat from time to time.
Great. That's good. It's hard to keep track of everything and stay productive. Cool. So yeah, well, without further ado, let's jump into this project. So Chris works primarily in FL, but he decided to start learning a little bit of Ableton, and because we're streaming from my computer, I don't have FL, so he just bounced out stems for the track, and I pulled them into Ableton, and I intend to stick to plugins that we share so he can be able to use this project file after. And yeah, so I guess how would you like to start? I'll let it be up to you, Chris, because we can go ahead and make sure we have a proper setup here. We can do a listen through and then get into questions and goals and things. Does that kind of sound like a...
Yeah, I think a listen through is probably the best. Let's see if there is any like transcription errors that I can address right from the jump.
Yes.
I'm interested to hear how these clips play together in Ableton. Just wanted to double check some things.
Yeah, agreed. So everyone knows we've got about 39 tracks, and this is the sidechain one, so I've just disabled that. Oh, this one is also, it says SC, so
yes, there's two buses plus you could probably delete the one that says current. If anyone has to export from FL and knows how to stop it from exporting the current track, I'd love you to tell me in the chat. Really appreciate that. One? Yeah, you can get rid of current entirely, and then there's also going to be a master copy. You can mute that for now. Let's save that as a comparison for the end. There should be one that's labeled master that you can mute.
Yeah, that's a great point. That'll be perfect for an A/B. Cool.
And then there's two reference tracks we've brought into here. We could probably mute those for now too, I think.
Yep, you're exactly right. Good catch. Otherwise, we would have heard all of them at the same time. All right. So let's take a listen to make sure that everything got pulled over correctly with stems. And on our side, we're gonna also have to figure out our volume levels because we have two separate volumes for headphones. So we're just going to start at the beginning, pray that this works the first time. Let me know if you want.
Yeah, you can push it a little higher. If you can push it a little higher, yeah, it's not too loud.
We're sending
That's good.
messages out into space.
Cool.
Just waiting for a response. Then one day, they got one. Be quiet. They're listening. Human beings are no longer the crown of creation, but the raw material of future civilizations.
Shout out the Foley that was recorded live with him.
Oh, nice.
It's in the FPC, which is an FL plugin where you do the drum pads. I throw it in there, the little coin at the end.
Oh.
That's directly recorded live from Fun Spot. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, that sounds great. Like I do remember the synth line now that you mention it, as that's been in your ID bag for a bit. So yeah, it's already like in a really good starting point, and I think that the changes you had made last week helped with that problem you were having a lot. Like that area sounds a lot better, I think.
I agree, and I'll probably have some questions for you as we move through this about what I'm seeing on the mini meters.
Yeah.
Because there's some stuff that like I don't recognize fully.
Okay.
But I don't know if necessarily if it's good or bad.
Sure.
So some goals that I have for this, I think, are matching a balance between the strength of things hitting, similar to reference track 1, which is a Rafiki track. By the way, we'll reflect on that later. Fun. But then there's a certain tonal aesthetic that is coming from another reference track called Deep Space by Blank Banshee, which is a very old track that it took me a little while to pluck up the confidence to write a story that included something similar to this reference track. So while I want the whole track to hit sonically closer to Rafiki's track, there's a certain juxtaposition that the Blank Banshee track will probably guide us in the direction of. And it's very specifically with the first drop and the breakdowns in between the two drops, rather. The breakdown in between the two drops.
Cool. Got it, totally. So I think what we want to do is a little bit of housekeeping and get this project a little bit organized.
Sounds good.
And then I think we can take a look at the references as well. to kind of be a good grounding point. So, I guess first off, tempo is at 140.
Actually, it's in the 160s if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it is 165.
Oh, cool. Nice.
I think it was originally designed to be written at half that, but we wanted to add tighter drums in, so it just helped to write it at this tempo.
Do you know if there's like a little bit of silence at the beginning, or is it perfectly start on like beat one? I just wanted to make sure that my grid was lining up with yours. So I think
it should be perfect. Yeah, the beginning of it should be the exact beginning of the song.
Cool.
But that's a fair compositional note as well. I mean, I just kind of wanted to I wanted that first riser to introduce the audience to the track itself.
Yeah.
Now, whether I'll use it live as a DJ remains to be seen, but it certainly matches my intro noise. Like the War of the Worlds foghorn, like I would layer the beginning of the track over that, so right at the end of the last foghorn, this would show up. This is a track I can easily see beginning or ending a set for me, which is also something that I want to keep in the back of my mind.
I like it that it's definitely like a story, not like a full-on dance floor banger. It's like more of a vibey, you sit with it. Cool. So I'm gonna go ahead and start by organizing things. I guess I will just go one track at a time and take a quick listen to see what everything is and put a quick name to it.
Yeah, you can boost my headphones pretty significantly at this point too.
Is that good?
Yeah, I feel good about that. Thank you very much.
Let's see. So drop. And just looking at this, I'm guessing this is probably where the drop starts. Oh, I can just unsolo. Yeah. So in Ableton, you can add locators. This just helps me to kind of bounce around the project file. So break down, and then I'm guessing this is probably drop. Cool. So this is drop 2. A shorter big drum. And then I'll just say synth to kind of show, all right, the first part of the first drop or the second drop is over. Now here's the variation. And it's probably similar here. No, not the variation of adding the synth. Okay, cool. So I like to do that just so that way we have an outline of the project, and I'm going to continue cleaning things up. I like to delete the silences. This looks like a riser of some sort.
Sub drops, and I a lot of times I'll reverse the sample, and repurpose it twice to keep that like consistency across bridges in between parts.
Nice. Yeah, I see the classic half pipe, as you call it, shape right here.
Love half pipes, I really do.
And so it looks like a couple of these are empty. Just wanted to make sure there's not any effects or anything on them. Looks like
What was the name of that insert?
It's 25. Or maybe it's not being used.
The sub should be on that. Insert 25 and 26.
26. Yeah, but 25 doesn't have anything.
Maybe this was a sub I never ended up using. It doesn't seem like it's active anywhere in my project file, so maybe I just didn't delete it.
So there might be a couple more. 29.
Yeah, nothing on 29.
Cool.
But there's effects there.
So actually 29, 30, and 31 as well.
21, nothing on 30, nothing on 31.
Okay. And What about 10?
Nothing on 10 or 11.
Okay, looks like 11 didn't bounce anyways. Okay, I think we got all the silence. I'm gonna reorder the tracks because it actually put the single digits at the end for some reason. So I always like to organize. All right, so now things should be kind of in the order you are familiar with. Okay, I'm going to continue with naming and cutting things. This cake, flat. And I'll delete the silences. This kind of helps me also have an idea of the arrangement. Impacts.
These impacts are problem areas in the mix that I'm interested in developing as well.
Cool. What is this? Another effect? Yes. Solid. And riser. This guy. Set effects. That. More effects.
It is weird that that's panned only to the left. I wonder where the right version of it went. If there was one. Maybe I just turned a knob in the export. It's not supposed to be that much panned.
There's some more tracks. Here, let's listen to it again. It still sounds too right to you?
Yeah, it's more right than I would have expected.
Okay. We can figure that out in context. And what are these guys? I'm just going to start being very liberal with my naming.
Yeah, that might have been one of the risers where I wanted the tail on it. But that's also a problem area. That's actually one of the things I'm curious about developing with you is like using like tails from reverb as like an effect in themselves, and then other times not doing that, and what that means for the mix.
Definitely.
It's the reverb.
Oh, cool.
It's the reverb send for the lead.
That's nice to have separate.
Yes. It's layer 2 for the lead, and the sub layer is somewhere else.
Cool. I think we've seen it. It's the other big sausage waveform. So we can move them together. Because we'll probably do some grouping things, some group processing. And that being said, I can go ahead and group these together. And this must be the fill. It's sub this base 1.
I might have also repurposed that sub in the second drop.
Okay. It might be on another channel. I don't see it showing up.
The red?
Oh, yes. Yeah, sorry. I didn't.
No, you're okay. So, I mean, at least for our purposes, that's something I might have separated into another channel later as well.
Yeah, that's totally fine. We can do that if the mix needs it for sure. That's a very common thing I'll do is like, all right, I want to make a change, but I don't want to automate it, duplicate the track, and, add the effect on that instead. I actually will probably go ahead and do that for arrangement purposes to split it into separate tracks so we can have it paired with the end synth. And I also, we can go back and make sure that I'm not deleting any revert tails for some of these.
Thank you. I do appreciate that.
Oh, I didn't catch that in the mix that there's an eagle.
Yeah, actually, in a lot of ways, like it's really a little bit twisted. But the second drop is like supposed to be like humanity like rebirthing. Like the Viltrumites have won, and now they're like bring you into like a utopia. But like the eagle is like one of the last remnants of the world that used to be. It's a really interesting concept. Like the second drop is definitely happier, but it's kind of like the promise the aliens give you. Like,
Sure.
what if it all works out? It's interesting. It's an interesting concept for a shock, I think.
I do too. I like the progression. Next track. These together. This. Okay. And silence there so we can cut that. Wow, there's a dog going crazy outside.
Well, we actually have a dog sample.
Okay. Oh yeah, I wasn't seeing chat.
There was a take of the vocal recording where we kept the dog sample, and I like that one the best, actually.
What's up, Tyler and Eve? Just saw y'all in chat. Yes, we have the windows open because I haven't put in the ACs yet. So let us know if the birds are too annoying. But I don't know if it's just me. I know Eve likes birds, but I've been hearing birds like all like 24 hours, 24/7. It feels like recently. Like
Sure.
I remember waking up in the middle of the night and there were still birds tweeting outside, and it was like that. I don't know if that's like.
It's
crazy.
probably their mating season. I mean, maybe they're anticipating a warmer summer. There is a report that the El Nino event that's going to happen this summer is very, very severe. So maybe the birds are picking up on that because birds have to have like genetics related to international migration too. So they might pick up on things that humans don't. It's interesting.
Yeah, Eve, if you know, you grant us knowledge in the chat. Oh, I already labeled that. And what is this? Ooh,
There it is. That's the hybridized channel where I put like an FBC on one channel, bunch of different drum samples, one mixer channel.
oh, and Court says they lament their fallen brother who graced us not once but twice with his presence in Picola. Yes, on vacation, at the pool of the place we were staying, every day there was a blue heron just hanging out in the pool. And he might have been crazy, but he was a fun guy to have. We also found a massive, not massive, but like, you know, like maybe like this big crab in the pool as well.
Money.
And Peach is hanging out as well.
She is.
So we're still organizing the project. Sorry, it's taking a second, but it's something.
But we're covering other things while we're doing it. Like this is stuff that I would have.
Understanding the skeleton of the track.
There's a lot of FX layers, which I think like helps me in a lot of ways, but can also confuse me during the mixing process.
Sure. I think I do nested groups, which is a thing you can do in Ableton. Having groups within groups. Oh, Court was talking. Oh, there was another bird incident where it's gross, but we found 2 dead birds, or they ended up being 1 dead bird, but the same dead bird in 2 locations, and we never saw what brought it to us. But the only thing we thought was that it just had to have been like a bird of prey, because the second location was like up on the porch, so like something had picked it up and like moved it. And if there was like a a big animal or something, we would have seen it. And we were on the beach, so I don't think there was anything like coyotes or foxes or whatever. So we're like, it must have just been a bird. And again, Eve, if you know, drop the bird knowledge on us.
But I love additional bird knowledge, to be honest.
Yeah. Agreed. X. Synths. All right. Synth drone. Let's call that another drone. There's a little bit of tail there, but I'm just gonna go ahead and cut it because
We can always bring it back later, can we not?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, that's not a problem. Because sometimes I want things to disappear, other times I don't.
Yeah.
Like I want to be very intentional because that was something I used to be less intentional about, and it causes problems, in my opinion.
It definitely can.
Or opportunities for improvement, as Encanti says.
And this. And I think that is only the intro. And Peach is at the window.
Peach is perched.
Yeah, I think
Perched.
all the bird action must be really fascinating.
Oh, fascinating. It's one way of putting it. Deep in her little brain, she's like, ooh, my ancestors are calling.
Take these guys and put it into our effects. This guy is also an effect. And this must be like a impact. Also put that. Here's the last base.
Yeah, man.
Nonsense, it goes in base.
So is your main criteria for organizing something as a synth instead of a bass is how much low end is that it has?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and usually the way I mix usually is to focus on the bass group and having that sounded good first,
Mhm.
and then the synth stuff I mix around it, so that way, I guess my philosophy is to like focus on what the focus of the track is first, like what element needs to be the forefront, and mix that in first, and then go to the next and most important and mix that in. Like you can do it all at once, but it's really helpful to be like, well, I want the stuff that's supposed to be at the foreground to sound the best. And because it's usually the loudest, it needs the most attention. It takes up the most space. So I just make that fit in, and sure, I can make mixing decisions like, scooping stuff out or panning it or whatever to make it fit. But usually like I want that to sound good first, and then everything else that's least important in the mix, I don't want to spend too much time on, other than just to have it fit conveniently around the more important stuff.
Interesting. Okay, I see.
And usually for me, that's usually the bass group, but because the synths are pretty important here too, they are certainly part of their own thing. But in terms of the space they take up, the bass stuff is usually all playing at the same time, and has more low end as well. So that usually requires a slightly different treatment of it than if you were to not have any low end at all, because the loudness stuff, the difficulty all comes in with mixing in stuff that has a lot of bass, because stuff that has a lot of bass takes up a lot of headspace and causes a lot of distortion.
For any producers that are out here, a brick wall is not always the best idea in terms of natural sounding stuff, but something close to a brick wall is important to eliminate low end frequencies in a lot of cases. This is something that I struggle with, just based on the way my ear likes to hear things naturally. When I'm mixing all these individual sounds together, I'm prone to missing low end artifacts. There is a part of me that does like that rumble in more natural sounding things. James used to describe it to me as a high end bias for me as well, which, you know, a high end bias can be the other end of a low end preference. This is something that I've struggled with, you know. Oh, and there's Liz's vocal. Well, Liz is her last name, but Sam's vocal, you know.
Kick, yeah. I like that. This must be the kick. Yeah. I was like, the kick? We still haven't gotten to the kick. Oh, another clap.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, they're alternating. They have alternating pitches.
This is kick.
That piece of the track itself is very, very old. That was from when this was originally a whip. It's like the original piece of the song that I wanted to keep that inspired everything.
Very cool. All right. We are almost done with organization. I have everything organized into groups I want them to be in. And then we're going to do just a second pass at the organization, and then we can jump into mix. So I recommend color coding if that's helpful for you to kind of represent things, and these are usually kind of the colors I use for these specific groups. And yeah, and then I normally organize things by the things that come in first, go at the top. You don't necessarily have to do this. It's just like, it's very helpful for me to organize my projects that way. And I usually have the kick and clap top. And I'm going to do grouping the claps together. And effects, I'm going to split into impact and risers. Say this is more of an impact. This is a riser. Okay. Move it into here. Okay. All right. We can now listen to a second of the track just to make sure we didn't lose anything. Worked. Okay. Let's take a look at the references. Now,
These are mastered, and the copies that I have them mastered.
yes, so what I'm going to do actually might be helpful. So I'll do a little bit of gamble here. I think that using references for mixing a track can be really helpful, but it can also be really demotivating because, like Chris just said, they're mastered as well. So not only is the mix done, but they're also in the loudness area that people want. So it can be really difficult to, compare a track that it's kind of like not, it may be like 70% done to something that's 100% done and also done by people that might have had the means to get it done professionally or whatever. So I'd say for person to person, it kind of depends on what you get out of it, because if it's just kind of like apples and oranges in your head, like when you're listening to the two, it can be really difficult to try and draw the connection of like what's different. But I don't know how I was able to do it, but if you're in your head, you're able to disconnect that and be like, they're just guys making tracks too, and like try and divorce this really sucks to listen to him. Like, I feel like I'm never going to get to that point. If you're able to get past that, it's just one of those things where it's like,
I do struggle with this. I do.
Yeah.
So I understand
what
he was talking about. I do.
And I think that we'll kind of explore some ways to try and break that down. And the most important thing that I'm going to start off with is actually level matching your reference tracks to your track. Because if the loudness levels are different, then it's already going to sound like your track is worse. And it's also going to be difficult to make comparisons if they're different levels of loudness. So
It's true.
Yeah, so as Chris mentioned, I like to use the mini meters plugin here. And as we go through the rest of the process, we'll probably look at the other things of it. But right now it has a LUFS meter, which is just a short-term loudness. It won't be showing up right now, but if I were to turn on the volume, we see that this is the loudness of that's playing. So yeah, and I know, Chris, that you mentioned you had questions about LUFS. So was there anything that you wanted to ask about that? Because we're basically, instead of looking at the decibel level, we're going to use the LUFS level and then make sure that it's the same level between your track and the reference tracks. So that way, they sound about the same.
Yeah, I have several questions. I think one of the biggest ones is like, I don't understand the relationship between decibels and LUFS in a meaningful work application. So I can read up all I want about these things, but when I'm trying to use meter tools that not only give me LUFS, but they give me all these different variations of LUFS, I have no really valuable context, even from like tutorials that I've done about how to make something the appropriate level of LUFS. Because I think part of this is also what I was talking about earlier about me taking from many different subgenres that would make this even more complicated for me. So that's the first thing, is I don't understand the relationship between LUFS and decibels professionally. And the other thing is I also don't understand like why LUFS are a separate metric in the first place. Like, I've read about it, I understand that functionally, but is like a relationship between LUFS and decibels even necessary? Like, can I understand LUFS through decibels in one way or another? So those are my primaries, I think.
Yeah, and it's certainly good question. So for Chris, and just keep hearing noises.
What?
It's probably Pete's just.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. But yeah, so so LUFS, I actually don't even know what it stands for, but basically LUFS are like a different way to measure loudness, and they're very similar to decibels. And I can pull up an image so people can see what we are talking about. Of course, it's whatever. I'll just show this. So how LUFS are measured is basically you take a large portion of a song and you apply this filter to it. So what the filter does is it like reduces how much level the low end shows and boosts how much the high end above 1,000 hertz is measured to the song. And then it basically takes the average decibel of that section of your song. And if you were to look at for example, you mentioned there's different parts of LUFS. As you see here, there's three different versions of LUFS. Mm-hmm. And the integrated loudness basically is meant to represent the entire track. And so this is really only accurate after you listen through a lot of the track. And I actually recommend not to look at this value, because this value is measured from your entire track. So if it's pulled down and level for the intro and the breakdown, because those are quieter. And so if it does the average thing, I recommend short term or momentary. And it looks like, but many meters uses the short term, which basically means like, all right, it's going to take a short amount of audio, take the average of that. They're relative. LUFS and decibels are relatively proportional in terms of like, if you are able to boost your track by a dB, it usually means about a LUF. But why this filter is used and why do we have LUFs in general? Decibels, describe, it's like a very scientific thing. It just describes like the amplitude, and LUFs are meant to describe the perceptual loudness based off of how we perceive sound. So basically, our ears are less sensitive to low end changes. Like we'll show another nerdy curve, which you may have heard of or seen, or Chris, is the Fletcher-Munson curve.
I have. That was actually a big part of what I just got done studying.
Yeah. So the Fletcher-Munson curve, each one of these curves basically means the curve is each point in frequency that you think is the same level in loudness. So if you played a sine wave at 100 hertz, it would have to, at this level of loudness, you would say, if you play a 100 hertz sine wave at 100 dB, it would sound just as loud as a 2000 hertz sine wave at like 90 dB. And what that means is the higher you're more sensitive to higher frequencies. Is that what it means? And so, in order to try and do a loose inverse of this curve, it translates to this filter to emphasize the high frequency and reduce the low end. And so at the end of the day, a LUF is basically applying that filter and then averaging some dBs over time to get that value.
So in this case, would a LUFS measurement be very close to an RMS?
Yeah, probably. It probably would. But and LUFs aren't perfect, but they're the closest metric that the industry's kind of embraced to try and describe how we hear loudness, because you'll hear two different tracks and they may be sausaged out, so they're at 0 dB, but one would sound louder than the other. This is meant to try and get closer to measuring that. So hopefully that demystifies LUFs a little bit.
It does. I want to ask you the question on top of it. So like, is there versions of life where a LUF is like -3 for one track and that's appropriate, but -3 for another track and it's not appropriate?
Definitely. It depends on the genre and your intent. For a track like this, where it's not a wall of sound, like there's a lot of it's a little bit more minimal, so there isn't like, in other words, this isn't like a tear out track where we're trying to be super abrasive and be as loud as possible. This is more of like, I wouldn't expect this to hit higher LUFs than a track like that. And each one are appropriate. Like if you get to like a really, really high LUFs value, it may sound terrible. Some people can make it sound good, but it's harder to get, and it's usually less noticeable, the compromises, if you're making really aggressive wall of sound, like tear out sounds, where it's like you're playing across all frequencies, your clap is like blown out and all that. Yeah.
So do you assess like whether a LUFS level is correct just based on the way it hits your ear?
I'd say so. I mean, it may not be perfect. Like, you may hear two songs that are at the same LUF level, but they may sound slightly different, and that could be due to several different things. But it's usually like the best way to try and more quantifiably get things to match without just going off of feel.
Cool.
And so that's why I kind of rely on it for level matching things. And yeah,
that sounds good. I'd like to see, if you want to take a beat when you're using LUFs to assess something, I'd love it if you pointed that out to me.
Yeah. Also, honestly, I only use it when I'm trying to maximize loudness. I almost never look at that meter any other time. Because for me, like, Peach is running around.
Zoomies.
My cat. So for me, the loudness push only like comes at the end really for me, because most of the rest of the mixing is like setting up for that at the end. And so I'm only going to do it now, so that way when we reference everything but loudness, everything should be kind of apples to apples. Because like if we're trying to listen to the stereo spectrum and one track is louder, then it's going to be hard to compare. So I only use it like at the starting point when I want to level the reference tracks to your track first.
Great.
Cool. So we'll just kind of jump to the drop here and take a listen to this reference. Oh, and let me also fix the volume here. Oh, yeah. I'm going to turn your volume down because this might be much louder. That's a cool track.
It's scratchy in the right way, which is something I wanted out of the first drop.
Cool. So that's like hitting about, we have 9 left, and then let's listen to your track again to get an idea of where that is. You're about -15. So I'm just pulling down this track 6 dB, so that way it should now be basically at 15. Yeah. And then we're going to do the same thing with Blank Banshee track, which may be a little bit more different because it's not going to be a super bass forward.
It's older.
Yeah. So it's about -11. So we're now at about -15. So we should be able to go back and forth. And also what I'm going to do is align the drops so that way we can quickly swap back and forth. So now your track and this track should now sound at about the right level. This still sounds much quieter. But I think you were saying this track is more of a like vibe reference and not like
yeah, it's more about the juxtaposition between the sections. Like for the first drop to make sense, this one has the comparison between the two. So it's more of like a compositional and spiritual reference track. The audio sharpness I want from the Rafiki track. And you can hear that in the lead. It has like some of the same effects on the leads as I have, you know. There might be some like frequency peaks that I have yet to really put a name to my ear hearing them as well. So that might be something we could take a look at too.
Cool. That sounds good. So I think now we can talk about some of your goals. I know before stream you had talked about wanting to try and get the tonal aesthetic kind of matching. And basically just summarizing what you're saying. Was there any like things that you were like, I really want this specifically, or I'm not sure about this specifically that you want to?
Yeah, I'm confused about whether I need to sidechain the toms.
Okay.
Like those impacts you labeled, they were actually originally tom drums. And like this is a question I come up constantly when I'm comparing kicks to toms. Like I want to use more low end drums. Like than my kicks, honestly.
Mm-hmm. We can definitely take a look at that.
And like, you know, the risers across the board, I think there might be still some low end in there that I don't really want at all. So
Sure.
Getting rid of like all the hidden low end within not just the risers, but everything, I guess, but very specifically the risers, because I have all these riser layers.
Yep.
And then that might also require some stereo widening. And I guess like the harmonics problem, like revisiting harmonic issues within the more complex lead lines of the second drop. Just revisiting that. I think we addressed some of them previously, but
Sure.
revisiting them in context so that the track hits hard in the way that I want, and the bass is not overpowered or the mix isn't muddy. I think those are all good goals.
Cool. I agree. So how I like to mix, because there's a lot of different things that you need to address to get a mix, that it feels so overwhelming, and because they kind of affect each other, I generally try and focus on one of those things at a time and then kind of loop back around. And the priority I kind of do that in is first ignoring everything but the general volume of each element and making sure that's solid. And I don't think there'll be much work we have to do here, because I think we're pretty close to what you'd want with that here. So that's usually the first step. The second step is then the frequency response of things and addressing that. So meaning if there are areas where there's too many frequencies, too many references, pulling that back, mixing those elements in. If it's lacking in some area, make sure that area is so. And then comparing that against your reference track, because your reference track will have a certain frequency curve that we can take a look at, and we can see how your track measures it up to it. So not saying you have to make it match, but if you wanted it to sound like that, then it would point to where you can make changes.
Okay.
And then the last thing is the stereo part of it. And usually the stereo and the frequency stuff kind of goes hand in hand for me, but it's usually like the least important thing. For me, the first is like the level, because that's the first thing you're going to hear if something's too loud or something's too quiet. The second is frequency. If it's a missing low end, it's not going to have impact or sub. And then stereo, because most people probably aren't listening on headphones or whatever.
Right.
And then after that, once those are good, then we can go into the loudness pushing part. So if that sounds good, we could start with level things.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds right.
Cool. And from here, I usually go, element by element, or like, first starting with the drums, because usually the drums are kind of the anchor of your track. Like that's your driving force, making sure those levels are good, adding the bass in, and then leveling the bass relative to the drums, and then going from there. So does that kind of sound like a good direction? Do you agree that, the first thing that is the most important, you would say, are your drums? Like,
oh, yeah,
your kick and your snare, or your clap.
It's whatever. The biggest thing. That's probably the biggest thing right now.
Cool. And because it's helpful for me, I think it's helpful for me to have things basically hitting at 0 dB, because I can tell, we can take a look at the full waveform here, and you can tell how loud things are. So I might just kind of start boosting things to get that. So we'll just start with the kick to get a good starting point, and we'll just like loop this section. And what I'll probably do is just increase it until it hits 0, and then everything else I will bring up to that level, and we can go up or down for those things.
Okay.
So not everyone has to do this. I know some people like mixing with headroom, but it helps me for metering stuff. And what I'm looking for right now is just until we start clipping, where you can see a little bit of red. So
you could boost my volume a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
It's so pretty low.
Yeah. Is that good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that was about 5 dB, and so what I'm going to do is just by default boost everything by 5. And that will mean bringing this down by 5 and boosting it by 5. So plus 5, boosting that by 5. So these should still be matched with LUFS. So yeah, things will be clipping if we were to listen to it now, but I'm going to do it element by element. We can turn down the master if we want. Cool. So let's hear kick and clap. Things are probably at the levels you already want. I might even say the clap's a little bit loud.
Yeah, that's fair. Or maybe I was trying to overcompensate, but I mean, it certainly has the right thwonk to it. So
Sure.
I don't know. Like I do kind of like it the way that it is, but I don't know if that means the kick wasn't loud enough. I always thought that might be a frequency thing.
Yeah, so we can come back to that. And I guess also for this first step, I'm wanting to be like a more going with the gut intuitive than spending too much time because it's easy to get caught up in that. And so if we have a context, and I think you have more percussion over here, so it may be better to focus on the louder parts. I could say this could be a little bit louder.
And I think a lot of those drums also don't need any low end.
Okay.
Like I would like to remove a lot of low end from most of those, if not all.
We can definitely take a look at that. Come back to it. So I'm gonna go back to the first bass, see where we're at. I'm gonna mute the other ones for now. Wait, did this not? This didn't even get boosted. That group didn't get boosted. Does that sound good to you in terms of just general level? That should be basically what you had before.
Yeah, is the reverb tail and the middle layer, are they producing any additional low end frequencies? Because this is a consistent problem in my mixes where like they keep having extra crap underneath them, you know?
It's possible that they will, but we'll
revisit that later.
We'll revisit that. Yep,
Groovy.
Definitely. But I think that sounds good. And second bass. I think it might be a little loud.
Now, is it louder because it's filling out the frequency range more?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, because if we look at the meter, and I'll turn down the volume so we can talk. This is basically, there's like 2 resonances for this first bass for everything but the sub, whereas this one, it's covering pretty much everything. So it's going to sound louder even if the level is about the same.
Okay.
And that's something we can address because we actually have that problem you're just talking about where there is, low end in that sound, and it doesn't necessarily need to have that. But for now, go back to the regular volume. You can listen to them back to back. I think the sub's actually much quieter here. All right, that is a little bit better. And check in the sub over here. And we'll mix in the next bass. I might actually turn this one up a little bit because I like.
Which one is this one?
This one is this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I had to remove the harmonic from the second drop.
Sure.
As well, it was the thing we talked about off screen.
Yes. Yeah. All right, so I just wanted to make sure that those are kind of in the same area. And cool. I think that hits it for general levels. When we come back for the next step, frequency, we're going to take a look at the subs a little bit more. But right now, they're in the same ballpark.
I feel very good about that.
Cool. And so in the drop, we're going to bring in each synth element and do a sanity check. Or let me turn off the effects as well. So I'm guessing, maybe that's a good question. For you, what's the next most important thing? Would it be the synths or the effects?
So actually, all right, so what the Blink Banshee track does really well is that even though there's so much space in the mix, like it still fits the aesthetic of the track. So the purpose to me of like not beefing up the lead in the first drop was so the effects could shine through brighter. Now, this is a unique mixing question because I use some of the same elements in both drop 1 and drop 2. So there might also be a mixing step where we split those into 2 channels, the copies. So that's actually why I've had a unique challenge with this track was the difference. So that's why I did what I did in the first drop. I want the effects to pop through more, and especially the drums in the second half of drop 1. Like that's Sam's like great contribution and probably one of my favorite parts of the song.
Cool. Yeah. And I echo that, and I think it's totally normal and reasonable to, even though you have the same element playing, again, without any changes, if you have other elements around it that did change, then you may need to tweak that repeating element a little bit that time around to get it to fit. Because at the end of the day, especially if it's something that isn't the most important thing, it's okay to like do different stuff to make it fit. So we can definitely address that. But for you, which elements do you want to bring in the level first? Primarily the synth things or the...
Let me hear what you're describing as the synth things really quick, just so
I guess the synths are just the tonal things.
See, I would have described that as a vocal, and the second one is more of a synth. So I want the vocal... Probably
that's the most.
That's probably the most, and then that little the other thing you played, that could be quieter.
Cool. All right. And so, in context with what I call the sad dong, yeah, I agree. That can be quieter for sure. And now that I hear in context, I actually want the hats to be a little bit louder. Do you feel like that hits for those 2 elements?
Yeah, I feel like that's about right. Maybe you can even boost the vocals higher, like even more, like make them even louder to fill the space. Yeah. Now the only issue is that might cause riser issues, so let's revisit that actually.
Yeah, I agree.
But I do want that vocal to be pronounced. It's like one of the biggest parts.
Cool. And so
they're listening.
sorry, let me mute the other ones so they're not too confusing. I think that's pretty good. So turn it up a little bit, and then this guy, he's pretty critical.
Pretty critical and shows up twice as well.
Yeah.
During drop and not during drop.
I feels a little bit loud there, but let's see the drop. I think it's a little bit loud. Okay. So there will be some EQing we'll do to this, and that might change how loud it sounds, but I did turn it down a little bit. Does that still sound?
Yeah, it's still within the range of what I like.
Cool. And then we did this guy and the last sort of tonal layer. He's pretty loud.
I heard an artifact in there, I think.
What's that?
I think I heard an artifact in there too.
I did too. It sounded like a click.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There it is.
You want me just to cut that?
Absolutely. That's actually one of the things I struggle with.
Which part? I think it's like right here. All right, we can come back to that and add like a reverb or something after, but good catch. So in context. Cool. And vocals, I don't think we'll have to change.
Human beings are no longer the crown of creation, but the raw material.
Yeah, not right now. Later we'll get rid of like the super lows.
Yes, agreed. Because that does have some low end.
Oh, it's everything. I gotta get near the brick wall for everything, man.
Yeah, it is. It's weird because for some reason stuff just really builds, like piles on each other in that area. So we'll first do the overall level of all the effects because they're all kind of one thing, and then we can go back and adjust individual things if we need to.
Quiet. They're listening.
I don't think anything really stuck out to me here and I think for time we don't have to go channel by channel.
Yeah, that sounded pretty okay as is. Cool. You know, and I do want this to play at louder volumes than what I'm listening to it at right now. So that's also the other thing is like I always feel like this amplitude gap is just because of us trying to protect our ears, you know, which I think is good.
That's true. And there's a couple things I can say about listening level because for mixing, it's really easy, I know, to get your fatigue and stuff. So normally most of the time, I'm listening at a level that I normally would listen to music where I'm like not trying to like feel it and like, you know, being blasting it. I guess what I'm trying to think of is like you're the average listening level. Because if you listen to things louder or quieter, it actually changes how you perceive the tonality.
Is that the Fletcher-Munson curve again?
Yeah. So if you listen to music much quieter, you see that you perceive frequency a lot differently. So the differences between high and low sensitivity is way different if you're listening to quieter. And if you're listening to it really loud, then everything kind of evens out a little bit more, so you're less, your sensitivity doesn't change as much if you're listening to it loudly.
Wow.
So, like, I don't necessarily look at this and try and compensate for that. It's just something to be aware of, that, like, it will sound different if you listen to it quiet. It will sound different if you listen to it loud. And so it's just like a sanity check when you're listening, to check different levels, to be like, all right, what if I'm listening to it like in the background? What if I'm listening to it and I'm like, trying to really get into it and blast it? But normally I'll just like sit in between those two, and then just like, all right, if after like a half hour working, check both things.
Got it.
Because it's also another good way to keep your ears more fresh as well. Because something that you're working on may poke out if you're listening to it quiet.
That's right.
Or too loud. So, yeah, just a general suggestion for people. And that being said, we can do that right now, because I think we're solid on the levels, but we'll just do a sanity check of listening to it quiet to see if anything is like, oh, this part sounds too loud or too quiet. And then we can do it a little bit louder as well. So we'll just go down.
Then one day, they got one. Be quiet. They're listening.
Like at this level, most of the important things you can still hear. Okay.
I think I can hear everything pretty okay.
Cool.
It's pretty close.
And then if we go, feel free to change the level if you wanted to try it. This one is your mouth. And let me put it back at 0 because it is clipping. There. Yeah.
This one?
Yeah, the top one. Yep.
Human beings are no longer the crown of creation, but the raw material of future civilizations.
I have I think there's two things. Second half of drop 2, that synth probably needs to be louder.
Yeah, I did boost it as we were listening. Let's hear again to see if it is better for you. And I agree. I heard the same thing. I was like, oh, relative to the part before it, it's not as loud. So yeah, actually, let's start a few bars in the previous section so we can.
It's a teensy bit more. It's closer. It's way closer.
I think we do a dB and we'll come back in, because I think part of it is also the stereo aspect, because the section before it's wider, and when things are wider, even if it's at the same level, it'll sound louder. So I think we can come back and address that.
The other thing was, I actually do think one of the hats / perks is louder than all the rest.
Yeah.
And it's the one it's like a little tick.
Sure.
It has a unique tonal quality compared to all the rest, which is why it stands out. Unfortunately, I could have corrected that on my end, but I was fiddling with the velocity of it right before I came here.
No worries. I'm guessing it might be one of these.
one, the high pitched one.
This one?
Yeah, and it's not the only time it happens in the song. I think that one's a little bit higher than all the rest of them.
Let's put it in its own channel.
It has a sister in drop 1.
Okay, we can pull that out too.
And that was just, I was just playing around with velocity. I can hear it better now.
Is that better?
Yeah, it's a little better. Yeah.
And is it probably a similar pattern, right?
Yeah, it's fairly unique. I don't think I use it that much.
Or like the hunted down. Maybe it's here.
Yep, there she is.
Cool. Nice.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Absolutely. Cool. So the bonus round is sidechain, because I think sidechain's important, and we can, there's a lot of different options, and I think because for like that really, really loud, like aggressive music, we're using the full frequency spectrum being really loud. Normally the sidechain wouldn't be like super extreme and surgical and cut like everything out and go like down to 0. And I don't think, we don't need that here at all.
I agree.
And what you were doing before was like a volume automation that kind of followed the curve of the kick. That's what you were doing before.
Yeah. And I played it a little bit, but I think you were offering that there was another one that you wanted to show me.
Yeah, let's dive into a couple of things. We can get a little bit deeper. And
I love deep dives.
so for your original sidechain, were you sidechaining everything but the drums, or were you only doing basses? What do you
Sidechaining everything to the drums? Yeah, I would say everything that I could muster, because I heard like from Inconti that you do want the kick to be full bodied and not missing all of its high end. But I don't know. I don't quite understand.
I think it depends. I think that depends.
Yeah, like because like an 808 sometimes serves a similar function to a kick, like in like composition, and I don't think I've ever been inclined to leap highs in an 808, but I could be wrong, you know.
So what I'm gonna do, that is how I like setting up my projects, is to set like a group channel where I send different channels to it. So instead of putting a bunch of stuff inside of a group, I'm just saying, all right, here's a new channel, and instead of going directly to master, these things are going to that channel, and then they go to master.
Okay.
And so what I'm going to do is send, let's call this SC. That seems to be our universal, abbreviation. So I'm sending basses to sidechain. I'm sending synths to sidechain. I'm sending vocals, sending effects. And those are just references. So now if I were to just solo this, we'll hear everything but the drums. Or nothing at all. I forget how I have to get this set up. Maybe I have, let me save this and then open up my template, and then we can
Yeah, no stress, bud.
take a look at that. Because this is a one and done thing. No input. That's what I have to set it to. Okay. And there we go. So if we solo it, everything but the drums.
Do you want to lower my knob a tiny bit again, please?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Just a tiny bit. Yeah. Groovy.
Cool. So right now we're just going to start with everything sidechained, and we can pull out elements if we want, because my guess is the kick, it is a little bit more low end, so it may not have to push away things that aren't sitting in that area. So we might be able to pull out the synths and the effects, but we'll start with everything. And I'm trying to think of a plugin that you would have. We can do this. Why don't we just do it?
It could also be Ableton stock.
I was gonna say, let's do Ableton stock, and we can refine it in the future if you want. So what I'm going to do is how you set up sidechain on a compressor, and we're going to take the source from Kick. And so what's helpful for me is to mute the clap so we can only focus on the kick. So now the kick will be pushing things down, and I'm just going to ride this fader a little bit until it sounds decent. So actually, let's just go all the way and then back it off from there, because sometimes that's helpful, is to push it past where it sounds bad, and then just back it away from that extreme setting until you can't really tell.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking we should pull out that we should probably only really be sidechaining the bass. That's my.
I think that's a fair. Yeah, that sounds right for this track.
So I'm just moving that sidechain to only the bass group. We can still hear it dipping too much, I think. So if we, for example, mute everything, it still is ducking a little bit further than I would want it. And what I am thinking is of doing this multi-band. So instead of ducking everything the same level, we'll duck the low end different than like the mid-range and then the high end. Because sometimes with kicks like this, you don't want everything to go away. You just want to make space in the area that it lives in. Because we don't want a super extreme sound to it.
What do you mean super extreme sound?
It's like we don't want it to sound like it's pumping. We don't want it to sound like a house, sidechain where it's like a creative decision, So like,
sure.
For example, if we were to do like this. And the other thing we want to look at is how they interact with each other in terms of level. As you can see, they're pretty loud, and I think the kick is already pretty loud. But as long as they're not like summing to be too much larger. So there's a couple different ways to do this. But I think we should probably go with the one that suits this track best. And I'm going to include an Ableton rack that I use in my template that does this multi-band, so that we split it, so we have like a chain that is just the low end and the rest of it, and it all sums together.
Wait, when you say a chain, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Like a chain in the mixer?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I have this that I'm going to pull in. And so what I have is an Ableton effect rack, which you've probably played around with. It's just basically grouping effect chains together. And what I have on this path is everything below this cutoff, and then everything above. And I think we can probably let's listen to the two. So the sidechain's off. I'm gonna listen to that low and to kind of determine where that cutoff should be. So in other words, where does the bass below that point fight with the sub,
Right.
or the kick? Oops. And if we just look at the kick, you can kind of see it's mostly 200. And sometimes it's good to look at other visualizers too, but it's mostly like the important stuff is below 200. And I'm gonna go a little bit above that because the boxy, like sort of muddy range kind of goes up to like 400. So I think this is the area that we should sidechain. And so I'm just gonna add the sidechain just to that. And it's still dipping pretty fast. So it is still a little bit. You can hear the distortion now. See, that's the problem. If you want it to be really tight, it will distort it. So you have to add some release. So that works, but I want to try something else as well. So there's another plugin that I would try, but what I think might be useful, because this is a little bit still too pumpy for me. Like you can still hear it go away.
Yes, it's a little severe. But maybe in context it doesn't matter as much?
Yeah, it may not matter as much, but there's one other thing I want to...
No, you can still hear it. Yeah, it's still pretty extreme.
So this is not being affected, but we can still duck it a little bit, which might be good, I think, but only a lot less. Yeah, so let's try that other plugin. So you mentioned you had Fab Filter. Do you have Q4, which is the latest, or Q3?
I think I got a quick Q3. Double check though.
Cool. Either one works. I just don't want to give you one that you don't have.
Yeah, I got Pro Q3. Yeah, just 3.
Cool. So you can actually do sidechaining in this plugin.
Is it not a preset? I thought it was.
I mean, there might be a preset, but
Show me to do it the other way. I don't want the preset because like I can't backwards work it.
So what we're going to do is basically automate this. So that way it will hopefully allow us to back off on this so it sounds less pumpy and use this to do the sidechain a little bit more. And we'll try and get this set up. I don't do this that often, so I don't remember where all the buttons are. Got it. Oh, I remember. I have to make it dynamic. So it's normally the EQ stuff is static, but now we're making it dynamic. And I think... I don't remember how do I change the input? I should know this.
No, it's all right. I'm just working with you.
You're just still going crazy out there.
Having a good time, man.
Here, let me go ahead and do... So we're gonna Oh, it is sidechaining already, I think. Because that red is the red is the reference, or the
What it's supposed to be without the sidechainer?
the red. I'm sure it's circuiting. So the red frequency response that we see in the background, that's of the kick.
Cool.
So right now we probably want threshold to. Oh, let me read what this says real quick. We want the threshold to be lower. And is it possible for me to change the speed of this? Sure. But I'm going to move this down. Let's see what happens if we make it sound really extreme. So that's it with an extreme setting, which we can back off. And sorry, this is listening with the other sidechain. Let's listen to it by itself. See how far we can get it without the other sidechain.
Okay.
So it's still fighting with the kick. We'll bring the threshold down a little bit.
This sounds pretty good.
Yeah, it does sound good. So let's mix it in with the original sidechain, which I'm going to reduce. And what we're going to do on the master to help focus in is just to listen to everything below the problem area. This is a thing that's really helpful for me, is to kind of focus on that and also see the waveform of what it looks like in time of just everything under here. So I think it sounds okay. And if we bring the high end. I think this needs to be lower because I hear it cutting out some important harmonics.
Yeah, I'm interested how you're able to like do this in conjunction with racks. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Let's double check that. I think that sounds pretty good. Yeah. Yeah, so there's a long story between of how I got this rack, but I'll show you the quick way to recreate something similar. Is basically I just put in an EQ, and if you do Control G or right click group, it'll put it in a group. If you press this button, this shows you that group. You can Control D to duplicate it. And on this other EQ, what I did instead was basically flip this around. And so now you have, just the low frequency stuff that you can then put plugins on after if you want to just affect that, and then the high frequency stuff. The specific one I have here is a lot more technical, because if you were to do just this sounds slightly different than if you didn't have this on at all. So if you turn this on, it will slightly affect things. So it's a super technical way of doing the same thing that requires a lot more stuff under the hood.
Mm-hmm.
But and the thing I did was also macro that cutoff, that split to this knob, so that way you can move it up or down if you wanted to change where that split is.
Okay.
So I think that's good for the kick. Were you doing any side chaining for the clap?
Yes. There was like a separate side chain That was based on input data,
Cool.
like input amplitude.
And this one we might actually sidechain everything because the clap is, hitting.
That's so interesting because I would always send the whole sidechain for the snare clap to the sidechain for the kick. So I would have a bus leading into a bus. So I mean, even though I had a separate sidechain driving both, it would be done in the same way in the mixer. So
Yeah.
this is a little bit of a different approach where you're like saying that like the one for the kick doesn't have to be as extreme.
Yes, especially for that type of kick. If it was like a full frequency click that had like a lot of high end and stuff, you would want to have like a quick duck in that frequency range, so that way it still pokes through. But because your track didn't have it, it doesn't make sense to push the rest of the mix away, because then it just, it's an audible thing where it's like, oh, there's silence there and it becomes noticeable. But so that's why, I would recommend, deciding what it needs, because sometimes you might be able to get away with like the same sidechain setup and curve between your kick and your clap or snare. But for this one, where it's like they're definitely in different areas, you can, do something different for sure. And I think that on that note, I think we could sidechain everything. I'm actually going to copy paste the split and put it on this whole bus, which is everything. And so this time, I think we were listening to. Let's do a sanity check. Or no, that's right. I moved. Here's what we're gonna do. Want to make it a little bit more heard. Okay. Sorry. So I'm going to add the same setup we had before, but instead of sidechaining the lows, we can just sidechain the highs, because the clap doesn't need to be sidechaining the sub, for example, because the clap doesn't have any meaningful stuff in that area. So if we just listen to the clap, there's nothing going on here, so there's no need to duck the sub and the rest of the bass to make room for it, unless you wanted to. But because the bass is so consistent in this track, it doesn't make sense to just push it away for that split second. So why don't we just start with it as if it were going to sidechain everything, and then we could just move it so you can kind of see what.
Yeah, because I guess you can always adjust things after the fact, right?
Yeah. So we just listen to the clap and sidechain while it's sidechaining everything. So if we listen to just the low. So just listening to the low end, it's like, oh, why do we need to sidechaining that part? It doesn't, really make sense. I mean,
and this is more of a creative choice, not like a hard, fast rule.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's kind of a detail thing that might be a little in the weeds, but I would just say, all right, we don't have to sidechain the sub, so we'll just put it on everything above, so that way this isn't affected by it. And so one thing I do see is that, because there are two different claps, the longer one we have, the sidechain is basically also sidechaining on the reverb. And I don't think we want that, because it's basically moving everything else out of the way for that like half a second, when the reverb is only meant to be like in the background. It doesn't necessarily mean we need a sidechain to make room for it. So I think what we're going to do is probably just use a ghost snare instead, which is basically setting up a track you can't hear, but has the same signal for each clap. So that way we aren't sidechaining something with reverb. Does that make sense?
Not exactly.
Okay, I can show you what I am thinking. Does this have reverb? Yes. So what I'm going to do is some Ableton shenanigans. So I'm taking the claps, and you can right click bounce group in place. I'm going to combine them together into one. And as we were just talking about, every other snare has that additional reverb, where the other one doesn't. I want to sidechain only using this. So I'm going to do that by just deleting everything else. And
Are you using a ghost channel?
yeah, exactly.
Ooh. All right, finally.
We're just going to get that set up. So we basically need this to play when all the other ones are playing. So this is a little bit of an annoying thing sometimes to set up.
So you don't necessarily need to sidechain the kick through the reverb of the snare.
No, I would say probably not, because if your sidechain is sensitive enough to sidechain everything it listens to, it doesn't make sense for the reverb to push away the entire mix, in my opinion.
See, that's different than the approach I would have taken previous to talking to you. So, all right. Yeah. I just wanted to clarify.
And it may not be a super noticeable difference, but if you had like a really long clap with a really long reverb, you wouldn't want basically feature the clap and the reverb. You just want to feature the clap. You just want to feature the impulse, because doing everything else as extreme can be a little bit cumbersome in the mix. So I am setting this up. So it takes a little bit extra work, but
I can understand the logic why you're doing it.
yeah. Cool. So I think you're probably playing here. Cool. So now we're just using one consistent. So I'm going to say, in Ableton, to keep something and not have it play, you can just disable it like that. And I'm going to color it that, and nice. So it's actually already pointing to the ghost sidechain. So now we have a consistent volume duck that it's much faster and doesn't go ooh, as it slowly goes back.
It makes all the sense in the world.
Cool.
So like the way I would have done it before is that would have actually created two different side chains within the same plugin, because it was responding to the input of each snare.
I see.
Which is interesting. This is different.
Yeah,
probably a little better.
If we had that project, we could certainly make the sidechain come from before the reverb, but because we're working with the stems, the reverb's baked into
Sure.
what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
Cool. So let's dial in the sidechain. And it'd be helpful if we heard the clap. So if you wanted to see how, there's a couple different views within the Ableton's compressor to see how the sidechain's going. This one I find the most useful because it shows the shape. But if you want to see the amount that it's reducing, you can go to this view. So it's about dipping about 18 dB. So that was just listening to the high frequencies. If we listen to the full thing. I think that sounds pretty good.
I think that's flaps, dude.
Cool. Nice. So we got sidechain. And I'm going to save. I like to save as because you can kind of keep the old versions of the projects. Okay. So let's just spot check by listening to the sidechain of the other parts of the song just to make sure there's nothing else that's different.
That's what you mean by spot check?
Yeah,
Okay,
just
cool.
like, all right, let's listen here, let's listen here. Cool. So one last thing before we move to frequency is I'd like to listen to the reference track. And I know it's going to be difficult because there's a lot of other things they've done, but if we just focus on the levels of everything in like the side chain, like if there's anything different that you want done to your track that might be missing, like, oh, the snare is a little bit louder, the clap's a little bit louder, or the side chain's a little bit heavier or whatever.
Okay.
So just big element level differences. That sounds good.
That does sound good.
Let's do it. I think the clap could be a little bit louder. Anything else you were picking up on?
There is a spectrum difference between the two. I don't know if that's because the sub is not mixed high enough, or is it?
That's exactly what I wanted to tackle next.
Okay, cool.
Does that sound good?
Yeah, I feel like you were right about the snare too.
Yeah. And I think that's a spectrum thing. So I consider we've checked off the broad strokes of leveling everything, and now was the frequency based stuff. And what it kind of sits in between the leveling is and the frequency stuff is the low end. I think that's the part that requires kind of like the most attention and consistency, especially when checking out tracks. The relationship between the kick and the sub, and also making sure that the levels are different, because when you're pushing for loudness, usually you have to change the low end a lot. And so when we're listening to like a reference track, it may be completely different than what we have. So before we do the rest, we'll just focus on the low end. And luckily, that's usually pretty straightforward because it's usually just starting out the kick and the sub and changing those levels and looking at the reference and going from there. And this is something I've been doing more recently and been learning a lot more about. And I think there's some stuff that we can do on your track, which I think will be good. So let's start off just by listening like under 200 hertz ish about on the reference track. And what I find super useful is looking at the waveform of that. And, that will tell you basically what we need to change about your track. It's very sausage, as you can see. And
all sauce, no edge.
Interestingly, like the kicks are basically as loud as the sub. And with your track right now, the kick's actually poking way out relative to the sub. You can kind of see. So what that means to me is we want to change, either bring up the low end of the sub or reduce the low end of the kick. And I think for now, what will help make us that decision is another tool. This is Ableton's Spectrum. And basically, normally, if you just have the default version of it, I'll turn off slow pass. You see the frequency response?
Yeah.
But the way I use it is to focus in on the level of the sub. So what I basically have done here is zoomed it way in, so that way it's only showing like, you know, a couple dB at the top. And because the sub's the loudest, that's what you can see. So this is a way to tell your sub's hitting at like, or your, let's actually do one at a time. The kick is hitting at about like, you know, negative 10. And how does the reference track compare? Reference track, it's like way louder. So let's do like a perceptual reference check. So just want to make sure that we're still going by the LUFS value, which is reference track -10, your track about -10. So, oops, we don't want that. So let's first start out just by boosting stuff. And I think
So it has nothing to do with the low mids?
it does, but for now we're gonna focus on the low stuff, because that's where the sub is. So just getting it at the same level. So
Because I did something with the lead that I don't know if it's a problem or not. Part of, I think it's like, it would have been the equivalent of the first harmonic on the other lead, comes from the sub patch. Like there's more harmonics in the sub patch than just subs.
yes,
Yeah.
I
like,
see that, which isn't necessarily a problem, but it is much quieter than we want. The reference track was...
See, I thought it was because I had included the low mids and that was eating up some of the headroom.
It might, but sometimes it's good to have those extra harmonics, and we can come back to it if we need to. But I think right now we'll just focus on the first harmonic, and we can then balance in the upper stuff if need be.
Okay.
So the reference one was hitting at about... I don't think we need to go as high as like -4, but for point of comparison, we're just going to boost your sub until it hits that same level. So it's at like around -9, so it needs to be like 5 dB louder. So now it's comparable. We don't want everything. So for just going back and forth, and here, let me...
Wow.
So those parts should be more comparable. Let's just focus on the sub for a second, because one thing I see that I think we need to improve, and let me turn off the sidechain for now, because that is, sometimes it's helpful to do the mixing with the sidechain off, because it's might be telling you different things about what you know, the level is doing. Okay. Maybe the sidechain is a little too extreme. Let's reference it, because the problem I'm hearing with
Which sidechain? The one for the kick?
This one from the kick seems to be longer than I want. See how it just kind of kills that section?
Yep.
And then if I turn it off, a little bit cleaner. So if we listen to the mix with it off, are the kick and bass still fighting? So we'll solo them. So sometimes you get to a point where there's a lot of things that are interrelated. And the first thing I want to do is, do you see how loud the transient is for this kick? Where the transient being like the first part, where
Yes.
it's like, I think that is causing some difficulties with the sidechain, and it's something we want to tame. Because when we start turning up the kick, that's going to be the first thing to start clipping.
Okay.
And we'll start hearing that. So we're basically, the goal is just to kind of push that down a little bit. I'm glad you have, I'm assuming do you have Pro L?
I thought I did.
Just wanted to double check because Pro L is an awesome.
I have Pro L2.
Yeah. That's it.
Okay.
Which is a really great limiter, and what I want to do is I'm gonna have to boost it and then I'll cut it afterwards. But I want to.
Why is that?
Because there might be a setting, but what I want to do is basically there's not a way to pull the threshold down. You have to push the signal into it, things at 0, and then turn it down after.
Okay.
So that's what I'm going to do is just first boost it, and we can boost it a lot to hear.
And that's just because one part of the sound of the kick is problematic in this case.
Yeah.
That's why you have to use a limiter for it. So a limiter helps you even out the spectrum of a specific sound, not just the whole track.
So it's just basically controlling the volume. So it'll affect all frequencies for this case. If I could split this into different areas, like, I'm only going to limit the low end or limit the high end or whatever. But for this one, I just want to limit the entire waveform.
Oh, and you're saying that it's not true for all limiters, that you have to push it into the line. You have to lower the threshold for other ones.
Yeah, exactly. So Ableton stock limiter, you can pull the threshold down, so that way to limit, you can, or actually, let me turn this off. So it's only limiting. So you can see it's reducing the volume.
Yeah.
But for this limiter, you don't have that option. You have to boost the input into it to start limiting.
Okay.
So that is my one complaint. I might be wrong. Someone can correct me, but there might be a secret thing. But that's what I'm going to do here. So what I'm looking for is, you see here how that curve was also kind of limiting the tail of the kick. So like where the low end is, I don't want that. I want it just clipping like the top a little bit. And so we boosted 9 dB, we can cut 9 dB. So at the end of the day, it's the same loudness. It just no longer has that really sharp transient on the front of it.
Okay.
I might increase the look head a little bit. So you can, I might actually want to push it a little bit more. Okay. And cool. So that will help with the sidechain a little bit. So we're not hearing as much distortion. And actually, let's look at the kick loudness. We can boost the kick loudness. So there's actually one or two other things I want to do to the kick. I think the kick might be playing a little bit too long. Like in other words, I think the kick could be something like that instead. Maybe not that, but shaving off a little bit of the low end. And because the longer this plays, the more it's going to sidechain and the more room it needs for the sub.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah. So, trying to think of a plugin you would have that could do this. I could also do it here and bounce it. But what I like to use is the Kilohertz Transit Shaper.
I think I have it. I do have it.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, I mean, is that in the basic bundle? Like, is that one of the free ones?
I don't remember. But this guy?
I literally just downloaded it. Like, I got the whole package recently.
Cool. We can use that.
We'll check. I hate trackpads so much.
I get it. Trackpads, especially Windows computers.
Transit Shaper, this one?
Oh, yeah. Cool.
Yeah, I got it.
This is probably my favorite thing for reducing that end, which you just control by reducing the sustain. So if we go really extreme, and I'm going to turn off the limiter because this will affect the shape of the sound. But that's without. I don't think we have to reduce it that much. And I'm actually wanting to add a gate, which is basically saying anything below this level, reduce the silence. So if I put it on an extreme setting, there's your gate. So we're going to remove the click by increasing the release, which basically lets it go down to 0 lower. Cool. So if we were to bounce this so you can see them side by side. This is the difference between the two. So we shaved off a little bit of time and also made this part a little bit quieter. And we're going to turn the limiter back on. Why is it? Oh my God. What did I do differently? What the heck? Oh. I only highlighted a certain part. Sorry, I was like, what's going on? Okay, so it's being pushed a little too much. And I'm gonna mix the volume back. Actually, get the level where your reference track was. It's still really quiet. And I still see that there's stuff we can smash. I'm almost wanting to go that far. Because to get to hit the reference track, it's hitting about there.
Mm-hmm.
So if we just try and listen to the kick. There's still too much. I think it's at least a good starting point. So let's balance that back in with the up. And turn the sidechain back on. Or maybe we have to adjust the sidechain now. or actually because everything is boosted, we are clipping a little bit. So I'm just gonna put a limiter on the master for now. So that way we don't confuse the clipping with distortion from the sidechain. So when you master, you can just kind of go back and actually I'm just gonna temporarily turn the volume down. I'm gonna add a saturator, which is going to distort the kick a little bit, but in a nice way. Cool. That's looking closer. And I'm going to add an EQ to reduce the low end, because if you can kind of see, the kick is still poking out a little bit, but I want it to be a little bit louder. So to be able to do that, I'm going to reduce this. So that way you see it's quieter, but we can then bring it louder afterwards. So that way the level of the low end didn't change. It's just everything else got pushed up. Like the knock is what I want to be heard. And because we reduced this by 4, I'm going to reduce the reference by 4. I did something else. This needs to be boosted by 4. Sorry, I'm moving a bit fast, but
No, you're okay. I mean, again, if it's helpful, it's a little different.
yeah. So we're kind of near about the same level in terms of the sub. The one thing that I note about this track versus yours is that yours is in a higher key, so the sub isn't going to be as deep and as low. That's why you can kind of see the reference track. It's like
am I in trouble?
red.
Like, do I need to change that?
No, you don't have to.
Should I change that?
I don't think so. I mean, one thing that you could do is lower the tuning of your kick, because it is still high and your sub is sitting kind of in the same area. So we could try shifting it down so that way, like, the fundamental of the kick isn't overlapping the fundamental of the sub.
Okay.
And the kick might fill out the low end a little bit more.
Okay.
So this is, yeah, we'll play around with it. So I'm using the shifter, which basically shifts it up and down in frequency. And it might change how the dynamics, but we'll just start by So maybe I'm trying to think of what we want to do, because we might want to shift the actual sample and pitch down the actual sample and not use the shifter, because if it shifts it as far down as I want it, it's going to sound a little bit weird. So for time, I'm just going to shift it down a little bit here, because if we want to shift down the sample, we'll have to copy paste the sample around. And the alternative is to time stretch and then shift the pitch down, but I don't want to do that either, because that might, time stretching kicks and stuff might change how it sounds. So we'll just shift this. A little bit. so now it's hitting much deeper, whereas before.
I see.
So it might sound like it.
Humans were sending messages out.
So that versus. I actually like the original better. So
Okay.
at this point, I would be like, yeah, it's probably not worth messing around with it to try and
Okay.
get that. How are you doing? Because I'm good with, going maybe like another half hour. I don't want to keep you too late.
I mean, I'm down. I'm having trouble retaining all the detail at this point.
Yeah, yeah, we can.
But I do want this to be finished with you.
Yeah.
I guess because like I'm learning a bunch of new things, but I did give blood today.
Yeah.
So I'm starting to fade, but
I get that. So why don't we can do a follow up for cert. And I'm thinking to introduce one new thing that we can tackle next time. So yeah, we can pause there. We can kind of make a list of what we want to tackle next time, and I want to introduce the idea of what I think we should do next, if that sounds good.
that sounds great.
No more diving deep because yeah, I know both of us are very like outcome oriented. So
I felt like I got a bunch of question answered.
Yeah, okay, good. Because it's like, we both want to cover a lot of ground, but also we don't want to get either of us burnt out. So
well, I don't want to lose stuff. Like I can't. I can't, like you've given me a bunch of new information, and then I'm also trying to focus on how you're applying it to the things I'm doing. Because the main goal as well is not just for me to learn. I want to be able to apply these things. And you've now introduced like maybe 7 plugins that I probably wouldn't have used for that purpose.
Yeah.
So now I have a wider landscape as tools, sure, but I don't even know how to use every part of them. I'm kind of just following along, for now.
I get it completely. And I will introduce one more thing, but we don't have to dive too much into it. It's just the metering the rest of the frequency stuff. So the low end stuff is pretty important, and there's 1 or 2 other things I want to do to it before we move on, but getting the rest of the balance out, I think, is important. And it's easy to try and do with, it's not easy, but the easiest thing to do is just to like A/B between, the live spectrum. So I'll turn the volume so we can talk. So like you kind of see yours and then try and jump to the reference and then look at the reference. And it's difficult to do that. So there's some tools that are helpful for managing that. And I really like, there's a bunch of probably free ones we can use, but this one I really like because this blue region is like a good target to kind of shoot for. So the blue curve, I actually don't know what reference I used here, but there's like...
And Conti used this.
Okay, he uses this one. Yeah, so the reference is pink noise, which is just a specific type of noise that I think has like every... It's a very technical term, but it is like a negative 3 dB per octave tilt. So that means like every doubling in frequency, it goes down 3 dB. So it's basically like a tilt down. Mm-hmm. And basically that's what most music kind of looks like, especially really loud music. So using this as like a reference of try to land your track kind of evenly within here is like a good target.
Okay.
And so this is also a little bit more detail. that I can use to look at references. And what we'll do next time is you can kind of see, all right, the clap is about that loud. It's kind of living here where the hi-hats are. You can actually see they have a lot of emptiness here, whereas that boxy zone is.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas your track is occupying that area a lot louder.
Mm-hmm.
So this would go back to that problem you were talking about earlier, where we would just kind of turn down this region if we wanted it to get closer. And I think it is a little bit too loud.
The frequency, that was the frequency thing I caught originally. Like it's almost like a scratchiness, but you're saying it's more boxy.
Yeah, and like to not jump into solution space immediately, but super quick thing that I would do, which would be similar to what we were talking about last week, is like this. So, I mean, the spinning wheel's death. You can see that harmonic right here. Just turn it down. And so if we look at the difference, this is where it is right now, but without is way louder. So that would help kind of match your reference a little bit more and things sound a little bit cleaner. So we can turn it back up and then turn it on and off.
Gotcha.
So the frequency range stuff will be just kind of like doing similar things like that, where it's like, all right, I want my sound to sound like this a little bit. Well, what part of the track is it the hi-hats, is it the bass, whatever that sits in this range? What element do we need to shift? Or it could be the entire mix thing. Like, for example, if the rest of your basses have that same problem, we could just move this to be on the bass group. So that's kind of like a preview of what the next couple steps I would be. And as part of that, identifying resonances, like there was a couple parts where I heard things poked out a little bit, and there's some stuff that we can do very easily to control that a little bit. Okay. So once we get like the tonal shape to match, then we identify resonances, and then we identify things that need to, maybe be more compressed. Like maybe the sub could be a little bit more compressed, so that way instead of it pulsing, it's more, it's a little bit louder. So that's what I think a good next session would be. And then the last one would be like doing stereo stuff, which I don't think is a big problem. Because it's a big problem if you're trying to make really loud music where every inch of space matters, but where yours is this track is a little bit more open, a little bit more minimal. Yeah. You can choose to put things where you want. And then we could talk about pushing it for loudness, but because we're already doing things like controlling the bass, your track is already starting to look more like a sausage. So by that point, hopefully there's not too much else we have to do, because it should already have like a lot of the problems that make it pokey and make it hard to compress and make loud will have already gone away.
Done. All right. Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know if my goals are really asymmetric to what you just said. I don't know if I have much more to add. I'm also trying to learn all these new skills.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, totally. And if I know we were just kind of mostly following the broad roadmap that I have, but if there were next time more specific problems you wanted to drill into, that I know we shelved a couple of things, we can certainly do that too. If you, because my method is kind of like focus on one dimension at a time. But if you prefer to like, all right, I want to be more problem driven, where I want to focus on a problem and fix that problem and move on to the next problem. And then, yeah.
How do I say
kind of see
how do I say that? I feel like whatever I was doing before wasn't really helping me. So I'm more open to like rebuilding from the ground floor up. Honestly.
Sure.
So I guess like really what I'm saying is like, you're asking me about my preferences. Most of my preferences were rooted in something that didn't really give me the results that I wanted anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm not super sure. Like if you were to export this and send it to me,
sure.
Maybe some guidance on like what I would even be looking for would be interesting, because a lot of this is new and it already sounds better than probably what I could have done on my own. Maybe, I don't know. Like I didn't really do things like, I don't have two different types of side chains for the most part. I'm usually doing all compression or all amplitude, you know, and I strayed away from the compression one because I found that it didn't really do what I wanted it to do most of the time. But now you're showing me the application of where it is.
Yes.
And I understand that better. You know, also all these tools, there's so many numbers and there's so many features to each plugin that I just have the worst time possible trying to figure out what I'm doing in these things. So, you know, I really want to emphasize, like, it's not that I probably can't follow you for more times. It's that this has already been a bulk of information.
Yes.
That will be hard for me to retain, you know?
I get it. And I think that's a good place for us to leave it in terms of details. And yeah, so I guess to reiterate, we can either, depending on the time scale you want to work at, normally I do streams every other week. We can do it then, or we could do it just ourselves at a different point, much earlier, if you wanted to kind of continue. And yeah, so we can discuss this on stream or off stream.
I mean, maybe we could say goodbye to everyone. You know?
Okay, good. Yeah. We can certainly wrap up and debrief. So, I guess the cool thing to do is to let's A B before and after. It may not sound too different because we mostly just focused on level. I'm first gonna volume match it because it's already gonna sound quote unquote much better because it's gonna be way louder because we pulled everything up. But let's first adjust that and then we can A/B. So here's the original. I'm gonna boost it to kind of be at the same level, which is, I think, the original is at -9. So -11, and then I have to boost a lot. New. I think it already sounds pretty better.
I agree.
I think there actually was some side chain issues. Like, I think the ducking was maybe a little too much. Or it wasn't too much, it was just ducking the high frequencies like we were talking about, which weren't necessarily in the way of the kick. So when they're sidechained, it's very noticeable. And I think that quick EQ we did right before we decided to rap actually did a lot to help.
I think so too. And again, like, this is here's why, like, that made me uncomfortable, because I cannot do that creatively well. It is always a technical problem later, which is something that I think I'm not saying I'm unwilling to learn new ways or anything like that. I think that's probably what turns me off the most about mixing and mastering, is like, I'll make these creative choices that honestly fuck up something later.
Sure.
And it hurts my flow. Like, I know there's an argument for always doing these in separate sessions, but it's almost like really, really difficult for me to work on multiple tracks at the same time, because if I finish one song, like, creatively speaking, first before another one, now I'm like having one creative session of one song, one mixing session of another, and they like overlap with each other. It's almost like too much for my brain to process. Like, I have to downshift into like a completely different gear, and then just stomach the fact that, like, what I liked acoustically about something creatively is no longer acceptable mixing wise.
Sure.
And if it is acceptable, you have to backwards jump through all these different hoops to make everything work, you know? So I think that's one of the most frustrating things I personally find about mixing. I'm trying to fall in love with the process and not feel that way, but it is very tough. I will say that, you know? And it's been a problem with me for years, I feel like, you know?
I get that, and I think you've identified like a good solution, which is what I do, which is what we're doing now, is trying to write without thinking too much or like getting too attached to the balance of where you're using, so that way when you do get to this point, you can do something as extreme as that without feeling like you messed up earlier, and being able to like kill your darlings, or try and disconnect that attachedness to the balance of it. And I think what will also help is if you listen to more reference tracks, like if you pulled in this one, if you keep listening to this one or others, and you A/B it between your track, I think your ear will already be like, you know what, I do like the balance of these reference tracks more, because if you hear it in context, it will probably stick out. Like it does sound really fat and cool without this change. And you could probably even back off this change a little bit, but if you listen to it,
like I couldn't
the
even
reference, then
I you had to walk me through the reasons why that was the right thing to do. That
Sure.
was like I lost that train 3 stops ago. Like I'm learning, like I'm not just learning a new stop, I'm learning a whole new like color of the MBTA. Like I'm not just like, it's not just like Oak Grove to like freaking Forest Hills, or that's a bad combination. I don't know. It's not stop to stop for me. It's like I'm learning like a whole nother pathway.
Yeah.
Entirely, like a whole nother color of the MBTA. So I get overwhelmed because I first am I struggle to even get from stop to stop. Forget about like this whole other approach to music. Like this is going to take so much time. So I'm not trying to overwhelm myself. I'm just I'm pointing it out to you.
I get it. Mixing is so weird and different and often not creatively satisfying. And I get why why it's almost a different job.
It is. It totally
and
is.
It can be, but for us who are DIY people, it is like a different thing and a different mindset. And for me, I'm weird in that I love having this because it is like a crazy challenge and like a bunch of problems to solve, and that gamifies it for me. But I get how it's super daunting to learn, but
and you're awesome at it, by the way.
Thank you. But like the one thing that I know is a theme that we talked about a while ago was trusting your ear versus using metering stuff. And I think it's a healthy balance of both, because especially if you're now like diving into treating mixing as a different thing and trying to compare yourself to reference tracks, using metering can help overcome your bias. Like it'll make it very obvious that frequency range that was way different, that we just cut a lot between the reference track and your track. Even if you don't necessarily hear it, you'll at least see it and be like, okay, that's definitely different. Now is that like a difference I'm okay with, or do I want to try and match it and see how it sounds then? And hopefully it doesn't necessarily give you a solution, but it will point out to you the differences and the problems. And so that can be helpful if you're really, because I've been in the same problem you described, where I've listened to this track over and over again on the creative side, and now I'm switching my brain to the mixing side. Well, I might have a lot of fatigue because I know what it sounds like, and the only way to get out of that is to like, all right, look at something that isn't my ear, something that is more objective, to say, hey, this is different.
I mean, it is very possible that I might need to switch to a one track at a time model. I mean, I didn't believe that was where I would end back up, but like, how else am I going to retain this information? It's almost like every new song is, instead of it being like a new problem in a workbook, it's a whole nother workbook.
Yeah.
Because of all the metering and like all the different tools. These are each one of these tools to me is like a separate mathematical equation that I used to be able to become acquainted with so that I can reapply the math somewhere else. But between song to song, I'm having this issue where it feels like I'm working on like a whole nother semester's worth of work or something. I'm running out of metaphors for this, honestly, but it's like workbook 1, workbook 2, workbook 3, but each one's a song. So like if I really want to sharpen my tools, I have to, at least for right now, focus on workbook 1,
Yeah.
so I can get to 2 and 3, and then maybe I can start working on multiple of these problems at the same time. It's just it is tough for me. It is tough for me to do this, you know. And I thought the Ira Glass quote would apply to more than just like my creative stuff. This is very much a technical skill in a lot of ways.
Yes.
And like, you know, you said there's aspects of taste to it, but even the tastes have boundary and like genre parameters, which are fascinating to me. And they are fascinating. It is interesting to me, but I'm just trying to think about how I can do this sustainably and not like get overwhelmed by the amount of information, you know?
Yes. Yeah, once I wouldn't say to feel overwhelmed, because this is at least how I like to work, which isn't necessarily prescriptive. Like, you don't necessarily have to be like, all right, I'm going to follow exactly what he did step by step. But you'll find your own flow and your own like attack plan for stuff that makes more sense to you. Because at least what we're going off is what makes sense to me is splitting it into, all right, level, and then frequency, and then stereo. And
are you well beyond 10,000 hours at this point?
I think I would be. I think I would be.
Maybe double it?
I don't think double, but I think I'm beyond it. But I was surprised earlier today you said you weren't at it. I thought you would have been at it by now. But
maybe not this part of it. But I mean, again, like if whatever I'm doing for mixing isn't functioning correctly, sure. I feel less attached to it. Like I'm not getting the results that I want. So like there's pieces of me that feel like that I need to change things at the foundation. That was one of the main motivating factors to go to music school. I had to check my sources.
Yeah.
You know, because there was stuff that I learned that I just pulled from a producer.
Yeah.
Or a video, and now I'm trying to apply this to everything. Keep in mind, also, FL had that hip-hop producer bias in the beginning.
Sure.
Like, so a lot of, like, the early tutorials I watched were very much had nothing to do with sound design whatsoever.
Yeah.
Like, not even a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
All sample-based stuff. Whoa, what happened to your screen?
There's the red light filter kick.
Sick. Well, all right. I mean, I don't. Yeah, I guess that's a good stopping point. You know.
Yeah.
You know, stay curious. You know, I'm certainly am, and like I spent a lot less time talking like during this stream because I am interested in getting better, no matter what that might mean to me. So when I'm ruminating with James about the stuff that I just did, this isn't me like white flagging anything. This is me like insisting that like I want to adjust things at their base level, and I'm more open to that right now because workflow wise I'm very much interested in making all of this more sustainable instead of being limited, in my opinion, to the creative side of things. I do and am fond of the technical side of things.
For sure.
And I already have demonstrated that by going to music school and humbling myself, like letting my music be used as teaching examples for the whole class. I did that multiple times with Incanti of Zebler and Conti experience. If you have any idea what that's like, you know what I'm talking about. So thank you guys for tuning in. Yeah. I appreciate it.
Yeah, this is a lot of fun. So TBD if we'll be coming back and doing this live, but at the very least we'll probably show updates. If we don't do another live stream, next time I do live stream, if we have updates, we can share that. But appreciate it. Thanks again for Chris. And we didn't say anything about the track in itself, but I think it's a great track. I like the arrangement and the development. Yeah, I think it's like it's definitely the creative part is complete in my opinion. I don't know if you're like, oh, I need to add.
No, I did. I finished it up tonight. I finished it up.
Oh, it sounds great. So I think it's just the mixing and mastering. So thanks for your time, everyone. I think we'll probably leave it there. Go follow allwack. Is your tag allwack on everything, or do you...
Yes, allwack on everything. These days I'm preparing to release a bunch more dance videos. I have a music festival coming up in Venice Beach, Florida at the end of July. I'm going to be finishing up a lot more tracks. Maybe you'll see some of those on these live streams, depending on when me and James are able to do them, So thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it, guys.
Awesome. See ya. Have a good night.